Hi, and welcome back to another lesson on harmony. Today we're going to be talking about diatonic seventh chords. Now, what that means, diatonic within the chord or scale, and seventh chord, any chord that has the seventh note of the scale when starting from whatever note that the chord's tonic or what the chord's root is. So, if you were playing D, you go 7 notes up, it's a C or a C sharp. If you're playing G, it's an F. You should have the idea if you're watching this video. Now, there's only really one common diatonic seventh chord in classical music, and that's the dominant 7. And so if we're using C major as our easiest example to use, our dominant seventh chord is a G7, G, B, D, and F. Now, the reason for this is G already has that strong pull towards C, mostly because the B to C leading tone, that half step, resolves really nicely. Now, if you put a seventh on top of the G, so an F, then you're creating a tritone within the chord between the B and the F, and that really wants to resolve to C by the F going down a half step and the B going up a half step. So you have all of these things kind of happening that increase the tension and make the relief all the nicer. Now, if you do it poorly, it's become such a used idea and used trope. It does come off as a bit cheesy, but there's a reason for it. It does create that tension so easily. And if you want some ideas of how to do weird things with dominant chords to make it a little less soothing, well, we'll get to that in jazz, and it'll be super fun. Now, the other two chords that are sort of common as diatonic seventh chords are the minor seventh on the second scale degree, so in our example a D7, and the half diminished 7 chord on the 7th scale degree, so a B half diminished. Now the reason for this is both of these lead very strongly to G, and actually in the case of the B half diminished, it already wants to go to C for the same reasons why the G7 does. Now, but in any case, what they kind of do is they're far enough away from the C that they can extend the amount of time that it feels tense and that you want that relief, but they're not so far away that you get used to having that tension, because one thing that eventually spoils having tension is having it multiple times without relieving it, because eventually your ear just gets used to it and you're like, okay, I'm hearing a bunch of seventh chords, that's nothing crazy or new. It's just jazz, there's a little bit more to jazz than that, but you get the point. Is it stops sounding quite so tensiony, but these ones are close enough to see that you still get that tension. You get more of that tension, but they're not so far away that that tension has time to relieve itself, because you don't want your tension to relieve itself before, you're able to get it where it needs to go, because then the house stinks and you have to put on the rubber gloves and scrub it because it relieved itself on the good carpet. Come on, tension, why would you do that? So there's only one other thing really to talk about when referring to kind of diatonic seventh chords in the context of classical tonal music. And what that is the way you approach a seventh chord, because I haven't already made it clear, classical listeners were not necessarily the most outgoing and courageous people. They would hear dissonance and it would just bother them immensely. And the seventh of a chord has a lot of dissonance to it, and it provides a certain amount of tension. Even if you are going to resolve it right away, it's there, and it can upset young children, or at least it could back then. Now our children are all playing, Grand Theft Auto, and that has so many sevenths that it's really society, man. Anyway, so how do you approach these very tense notes, or at least these notes that were thought to be super tense? And you kind of treat them in the same way you would a non-chord tone. You approach them in the same way. It's very common, especially to see them as treated almost as neighbor notes or passing tones, which we've gone over in the first example of non-chord tones in the melody video. And we're going to go over some other ways to approach non-chord tones in other melody videos. So if you want to go check those out, if they're already up, if you're living in the future. Otherwise, you'll wait and you'll see how they happen. But yeah, generally, when you have a diatonic seventh chord, if you're writing in a more classical style, you don't just want to go there and just be like, well, it's a chord tone. Well, no, you almost want to treat it as a non-chord tone. And yeah, that's really it. All I have to say about it. I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I hope you come back to the channel soon. Bye-bye.